The chair by the window still creaks when she sits in it, even though she hasn't sat there in weeks. I notice it every morning, that faint, lonely groan of wood when the sun hits it, as if the house itself remembers what used to be there. Her blanket's still folded over the backrest. A mug with a half-faded lipstick mark sits beside it, fossilized in dried coffee. She hasn't touched it, but she hasn't told me to throw it away either. That's how everything feels now, untouched but not gone. Yesterday, she walked past me in the hallway and flinched when our shoulders brushed. Like my skin was static electricity. I froze. She didn't even look back. Just kept walking, holding her phone, thumb tapping something with mechanical calm. And then she said it. Not to me, but loud enough to make sure I heard. "If you want touch, book a massage." It echoed, not because of what she said, but because of how she said it. Cold. Surgical. Like she was reading a line from a manual on how to avoid being human. For a second, I actually waited for her to laugh. To smirk. To say I'm kidding. But she didn't. I felt this weird mix of humiliation and relief. Humiliation because, well, my wife just told me to pay someone else for affection. Relief because now it was clear. No pretending. No, maybe she's just tired. No excuses. So I said the first thing that came to mind. Not loud, not angry, just flat. "If you want comfort, get a job." She stopped walking. Didn't turn around. Just stood there, shoulders stiff, the light from her phone glowing against her jaw. And for one stupid second, I thought she might cry. She didn't. She just went upstairs and shut the door. I stayed there, in the hallway, listening to her footsteps fade, and then to the silence that followed. That silence stretched so long it felt alive. I could hear the clock ticking from the living room, the refrigerator humming, even the faint buzz of a streetlight outside. Everything was louder than us. That night, I sat in the chair by the window, her chair, just to see what it felt like. It smelled faintly like her shampoo, lavender and something else, something sharp. And while I sat there, I saw her reflection in the glass. Not beside me, but across the street, standing in the glow of a car's headlights, talking to someone I didn't recognize. Her hands were moving, animated, nervous, like she was explaining something urgent. And then she laughed. The same laugh I hadn't heard in months. The car door opened. She stepped closer. Too close. I didn't go outside. I didn't yell. I didn't even blink. I just sat there, frozen in that stupid chair, watching my life turn into something unrecognizable. And the worst part? I still wasn't sure if I wanted to know the truth. The next morning, she acted like nothing had happened. No mention of the hallway. No mention of the massage comment. No mention of the fact that I saw her outside last night with some guy whose face I still can't shake from my brain. She was wearing a gray hoodie I hadn't seen in years and humming while pouring cereal like she hadn't just gutted me in the most delicate way possible. I sat at the table watching the way she leaned on the counter, scrolling through her phone with one hand and spooning Cheerios into her mouth with the other. The hum was off-pitch. It used to be Fleetwood Mac. Now it sounded like a threat. I cleared my throat, just to test the air. "Who were you talking to outside last night?" I asked, careful, like I was defusing a bomb. She didn't look up. "I needed fresh air," she said. "It was just someone from the co-op board." Lie. We don't live in a co-op. We live in a 1,100 square foot rented duplex with a dying porch and exactly 0 board meetings. But I didn't correct her. I just nodded and stared at the spoon in my hand, like it might suddenly explain the rules of marriage to me. She went back upstairs 20 minutes later and didn't come down for the rest of the day. No conversation. No apology. Not even the passive-aggressive noise she usually makes when she walks past my tools in the hallway. And that's when I realized something. We weren't fighting. This wasn't a rough patch. It was something worse. This was a deliberate, strategic withdrawal. A quiet war of attrition where the winner is whoever cares less. I sat in the living room for hours, trying to make sense of the weight in my chest that wouldn't move. It wasn't heartbreak. Not yet. It was more like suspicion mixed with dread, soaked in self-doubt. And then I did what I always do when I spiral. I checked her phone records. Not her texts. Not her socials. I'm not that reckless. But we still share a phone plan, something she apparently forgot. One number showed up 17 times in the last 5 days. Not saved. No name. Just a Chicago area code and the same timestamp, every night, right after I fell asleep. That night, I waited until she went to bed. She didn't say goodnight. She just clicked off her lamp and turned her back to me. I laid there in the dark for nearly an hour, pretending to breathe evenly, counting the seconds between each exhale. When I finally heard her breathing slow into that shallow, sleeping rhythm, I slipped out of bed and walked to the garage barefoot. There's a crawl space above our garage with a line of fiberglass insulation hanging out like a tongue. That's where I found the shoebox. The one with her name on it in faint Sharpie. I'd seen it before, years ago, when we moved in. I thought it had old sketchbooks or her childhood diaries. But I opened it anyway. I needed to know who I was living with. Inside were three things: a cheap burner phone, a ring I thought she'd lost 2 years ago, and a folded piece of paper with an address written in her handwriting. The number had a sticky note on it. Only use if things go bad. Things go bad. What things? I sat there on the cold concrete floor, heart racing, hands shaking, reading that phrase over and over like it would rearrange itself into something more logical. But it didn't. It stayed what it was: a threat, a backup plan, an exit. I put everything back, closed the box, put it exactly where I found it. The next morning, she kissed me on the cheek again, like nothing happened. Like I didn't just learn she had an escape route she never told me about. And that's when it hit me. I wasn't just being phased out. I was being erased. Part 3 gets worse. Much worse. Because I followed the address on that note. You won't believe what I found. It took me 3 days to work up the nerve to go to the address on the note. I don't know why it took that long. Maybe I was hoping something else would happen in the meantime. A confession, a breakdown, a fight that forced the truth out into the open. But nothing came. Just the same manufactured routine. Her robotic smiles. Her sudden interest in podcasts she never listened to before. And always, that smell of perfume in the hallway after midnight. Like she was dressing up for ghosts. On the 4th morning, I called in sick. Told my boss I had food poisoning, which wasn't a total lie because I could barely keep anything down. My stomach was knotted so tight it felt like my body was trying to warn me. I punched the address into GPS and followed the voice through a maze of gray roads until I pulled up in front of a house that looked like it had been vacuum sealed in the 1980s. It was small, white, with red shutters that had faded to a dull rust color. The porch sagged in the middle. Wind chimes rattled even though there was no wind. I sat in the car for 10 minutes, just watching. A black sedan was parked in the driveway. No movement inside. Curtains drawn. There was no name on the mailbox. Just a cracked sticker of a sunflower and a peeling number 7. Eventually, I got out. I didn't even know what I was doing, what I'd say if someone answered the door. I just needed something. Proof. A reason. A piece of the puzzle. My knuckles hovered over the door, heart pounding loud enough I was sure it would give me away. But before I knocked, the door opened. And there she was. Not Morgan. A different woman. Mid-40s maybe, hair tied back, wearing a hoodie 2 sizes too big and no shoes. She looked at me like she already knew why I was there. "You're early," she said deadpan. I think I have the wrong house," I stammered, but my voice cracked on the second word. She smirked. Not cruel, not kind, just like she'd seen this kind of scene before. "No one ends up here by mistake," she said, stepping aside. "You might as well come in." I did. Because of course I did. Because I was too tired not to. The house smelled like old books and dust, and something sharp underneath, like vinegar and roses. There were no photos on the walls. No TV. Just a wooden table in the middle of the room with a teacup on it, and an open laptop showing a paused security feed of a street I didn't recognize. She sat down, crossed her legs, and gestured to the chair across from her. "I don't know what you think you're looking for," she said, "but I promise you'll wish you never found it." I opened my mouth, then closed it. I didn't know how to start, so I just told the truth. My wife had this address written down, in a box in our garage. She marked it for emergencies. She didn't flinch. She didn't even blink. "Then she still hasn't made a choice," the woman said quietly. "Good. That means you have time." Time for what? She pushed the laptop toward me and hit play. And that's when I saw it. The first frame showed my house. My actual house. Camera angled from above. Watching the front door. Watching me. The second frame? The side alley. A clear shot of my bedroom window. "Who's filming us?" I asked, my voice a whisper now. My hands were ice. The woman shook her head. "Wrong question," she said. "The question is, who paid for the feed?" I stood up so fast the chair screeched across the floor. She looked up at me, calm as ever. "You don't want to go home yet, she said. But I left anyway. And what I found when I got back made me wish I'd never left the driveway. When I pulled into the driveway, the first thing I noticed was the trash can. It had been dragged halfway down the street, lid open like someone had rifled through it in a hurry. Our mailbox was slightly ajar, and a flyer for a dog groomer was fluttering in the breeze, stuck between some junk mail and a credit card offer. But what really froze me, what stopped me dead before I even shut the car door, was the front welcome mat. It had been flipped, corner curled up, rug twisted sideways, like someone had kicked it or stepped on it during a struggle. That rug never moved. It was thick, weighted, heavy from years of dirt and snow and salt. You could stomp on it in steel-toe boots, and it wouldn't flinch. And now it was off-center, like something had gone wrong at the threshold. I walked up slow, keys clutched between my fingers out of instinct, like I was afraid of being jumped. I reached for the door and found it unlocked. That was the second thing. Morgan never left the door unlocked. Not since the break-in 3 years ago when someone smashed her car window and stole an empty purse. I stepped inside. The house was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes your ears strain for noise, any noise, just to prove you're not in a dream. The hallway smelled like her new shampoo, but stronger, like she'd just used it. The living room lights were on. The TV was paused on a local news channel. A frozen anchor mid-sentence. A half-eaten bowl of blueberries sat on the coffee table. Her phone was charging in the wall socket, screen lit up with a wallpaper I didn't recognize. A photo of a pier at night, with someone standing at the end of it. A silhouette. But she wasn't there. Morgan, I called, walking toward the bedroom. Nothing. The bedroom was pristine. Too pristine. The bed was made, and Morgan never made the bed. Her side was smooth, her pillow fluffed. That's when I noticed the third thing. Her nightstand drawer was open. Not wide, just a crack. But it was always closed. Always. I walked over and pulled it open. Empty. Completely. That drawer used to be filled with random things. Receipts, old mascara, allergy pills, half-used notebooks, some jade necklace her aunt gave her that she never wore, but never threw out. Now it was bare. Wiped. Cleaned like it had never been used. And next to it, a sticky note on top of her closed laptop. 2 words. All caps. Don't follow. I stared at it for a long time. My pulse was so loud in my ears that I almost missed the sound from the kitchen. A click like something metal tapping against the counter. I spun around and walked fast down the hall, heart thudding. Nothing was out of place. Except the back door was cracked open. Just a sliver. Enough to let cold air snake through the kitchen tile. She was gone. No shoes by the door. No coat missing. Just absence. I sat down on the floor. Right there in the kitchen. Back against the fridge. I didn't know what I was more afraid of. That something had happened to her. Or that she had planned this all along. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing the woman's voice from the house with the red shutters. You'll wish you never found it. But I had found it. And now I had a burner phone, a surveillance feed, an empty drawer, and a wife who had somehow vanished in the middle of the day without taking a single thing. Not even her wedding ring, which I would later find hidden behind the washing machine, wrapped in a paper towel. But the worst part? The next morning, someone else answered her phone. And they knew my name. I don't remember falling asleep. All I know is that sometime after 3 a.m., still fully clothed, I passed out on the couch with the TV hissing static in the background, and my phone clutched to my chest like it could somehow stop me from unraveling. I was dreaming about the chair by the window again. Only this time, it wasn't empty. Morgan was in it, but not the way I remembered her. Her back was to me, her hair was longer, and she was whispering something to the wall. I couldn't hear the words. Just her mouth moving, her head tilting, her fingers tapping against the armrest like Morse code. I reached out to touch her shoulder, and right before I made contact, she vanished. The chair didn't even creak. I woke up choking on my own breath, heart racing, drenched in sweat. My phone was ringing. Her phone. I'd taken it from the kitchen after she disappeared. I don't know why. Maybe I thought it would ring. Maybe I needed something of hers in my hands to remind myself she was real. But now it was lighting up, buzzing violently, vibrating across the coffee table like it was trying to escape. Unknown caller. I hesitated for half a second, then picked it up. Hello, I said, already on edge, expecting silence or some robocall garbage. Instead, a voice, low, male, and sharp like broken glass, answered. Everett. I froze. Every hair on my arm stood up. Who is this? I asked, my voice cracking like a kid caught in a lie. You shouldn't have taken the phone. My skin turned to ice. I swallowed hard. Where's Morgan? A pause. Then, you weren't supposed to follow the address. There was no sound behind the voice. No traffic, no wind, no TV. It was like he was calling from inside a vacuum. What do you want from me? I managed, standing now, pacing like a caged animal. Why do you know my name? What is this? Check your bank account, he said flatly, then hung up. That was it. No threat. No demand. Just that. I stared at the screen for a full minute before it dimmed. The wallpaper was still that photo of the pier. But now that I looked closer, I realized the silhouette at the end of it looked familiar. Not like Morgan, but someone I'd seen once. In the background of a picture from a barbecue last summer. A guest of a guest. I couldn't even remember his name. I pulled out my laptop, hands trembling. Logged into our joint bank account. At first, everything looked normal. But then I saw it. A wire transfer for days ago. Not from me. Not from her. To her. $14,800. From a company I'd never heard of, Raven Phase Logistics. No description. Just a transaction ID and a bounce address out of Delaware. We had never had more than $3,000 in that account at one time. Now there was almost 17 grand. I leaned back in my chair, the air leaving my lungs like I'd been punched in the stomach. She wasn't just leaving. She was funded. I stared at the transfer confirmation. My mind was spinning. I thought of the burner phone, the surveillance footage, the empty drawer, the ring hidden like trash. And now this. A silent deposit from a company that doesn't exist, tied to a number that somehow knows my name and calls me in the middle of the night like I've broken some invisible rule. And worse, the money wasn't just there. It had been touched, transferred again, split between two accounts. One local, one international. She hadn't run away. She had relocated. I couldn't go to the police. What would I even say? Hi. My wife ghosted me after planting spy cameras around our house, took a shady wire transfer, and left me a sticky note that may or may not be a warning from a secret group of bored suburban women with burner phones and peer photos. They'd laugh me out of the station. So instead, I called the only person who might not. My brother. And that call was the second worst mistake I've made in this entire mess. I hadn't spoken to my brother in 5 months. Not out of anger, just distance. He lives 2 towns over, has 3 kids under the age of 8, and is married to a woman who speaks in Instagram captions and insists on family theme nights. We exist on opposite ends of the personality spectrum. I'm quiet, awkward, self-critical to a fault. He's charismatic, loud, and maddeningly confident. Growing up, everyone liked him more. Teachers, coaches, even my ex-girlfriends. But he always had my back. Or at least I thought he did. His name's Nathan. When he picked up the phone, I expected confusion. Maybe concern. Instead, he answered on the first ring like he was already waiting for the call. Hey, he said, his voice low. You okay? I paused. How did you know it was me? I saw the number. Figured something was up. That should have been my first red flag. My number's still saved in his phone. He should have seen my name. But I didn't catch it in the moment. I was too desperate, too sleep-deprived, too buried in my own unraveling to notice the cracks forming in places I never questioned. She's gone, I said. Morgan. She left. Took nothing. Just vanished. He didn't respond immediately. Just a slow inhale, like he was filtering the words for landmines. And that word hit me sideways. And that's what you say when someone tells you they burned dinner. Not when their entire life has just imploded. I sat down at the edge of the bathtub, the only place in the house that didn't feel haunted, and forced myself to stay calm. I found a burner phone in a box she hid in the garage. There was a note with an address. I went there. A woman showed me surveillance footage of my house. Morgan's gone. Her account got wired nearly 15 grand from some shell company. And now someone I don't know is calling me in the middle of the night, using my name. I waited. The silence stretched. Then, he said something I'll never forget. She told me this might happen. My blood ran cold. I stood up so fast the shower curtain swayed. What are you talking about? She came to see me a few weeks ago. He continued, tone still maddeningly calm. Said she might need space. That you'd be confused. That you might start digging around and make things worse. My mouth was dry. You didn't think to tell me? She made me promise not to. He said simply, like that explained everything. Said you weren't in danger, just spiraling. And honestly, Everett, You kind of are. That was the moment everything snapped into focus. The late-night text I saw on Morgan's phone last month that simply read, "He's starting to notice." The sudden disappearance of the photo from our hallway where I stood next to her, arm wrapped around her shoulders, while Nathan photobombed us in the background. My voice shook. "Are you involved in this?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he sighed, the kind of exhale that people do when they're about to lie. "She came to me for help," he said. "I gave her advice. That's all." "No, Nathan," I said, barely keeping it together. "She didn't ask for advice. She asked for secrecy. You helped her disappear." "She needed out," he said, his voice turning sharper now. "She was drowning, and you were dragging her down with you. You haven't been okay in years, and you just kept pretending everything was fine because you needed her to be your emotional crutch. It wasn't healthy." I wanted to scream, to throw the phone through the wall. Instead, I just whispered, "So you helped her run?" Silence again. "She left because she needed to," he finally said. "But if you keep pulling on threads, you're going to make things worse for everyone." I hung up. I didn't throw the phone. I didn't scream. I just sat there on the floor of the bathroom for what felt like hours, the tiles cold under my legs, trying to understand how the two people closest to me, the only two I thought I could trust, had written me out of my own life like I was a character they were done using. That night, I went into Morgan's old email, the one she hadn't used since before we got married. I'd set it up for her on a shared server when we booked our honeymoon. She never changed the password. There was one unread message, sent at 4:12 a.m. No subject, no sender name, just a string of numbers in the address. Inside the email was a single sentence: "You're already in the second phase." And below that, an attachment. Video file. 3 minutes and 12 seconds. I clicked it. I shouldn't have. What I saw changed everything. The video began with static, not the digital kind, but the analog kind, like it had been recorded on an old camcorder and converted to modern format by someone who didn't know what they were doing. For the first few seconds, I wasn't even sure it was playing. Just flickers of gray and lines rolling across the screen like the machine was breathing wrong. Then the image snapped into place with a jolt. It was my kitchen, but not how it looks now. The tile was the old one, before we renovated last year. The fridge still had those dumb magnetic poetry tiles on it that Morgan used to rearrange when she was bored. And the calendar on the wall? It said October 2021. I leaned in closer, heart pounding. She was in the frame. Morgan, sitting at the table, wearing a flannel I thought she'd donated. Her hair was shorter. She looked tired but calm, staring directly into the lens like she was about to deliver a confession. But she didn't speak right away. She just sat there, breathing slowly, fingers tracing the edge of her coffee mug. "Finally," she said, "if you're watching this, it means I had to move forward. It means Everett didn't let go." My chest tightened. She looked down, then back up. "I don't hate you," she said, "but I can't carry this anymore. I've lived in the same script for 5 years, the anxious days, the late-night spirals, the same conversations that never change. You need me to be your therapist, your audience, your mother. And I let it happen. I let you hollow me out because it was easier than leaving." She paused, closed her eyes. "But I'm not scared of leaving anymore." The screen flickered, then cut to a different angle, grainier, like a hidden camera. She was in the garage now, pulling the box down from the crawl space. The same box I found. She opened it and placed the burner phone inside. Then something new. She pulled out a second phone, flipped it open, and made a call. No sound on the audio, just the image of her talking, smiling, laughing. Then the screen froze. Text appeared. Raven phase 2 confirmed. Asset exited. Monitor subject for escalation. And then the video ended. I stared at the black screen, stomach twisted in knots. I replayed it twice. The words didn't change, no matter how many times I hoped they would. She had recorded this months ago. Before the fights. Before the hallway. Before the massage comment. This wasn't impulsive. It was premeditated. Structured. Scripted. I should have been furious. I should have felt betrayed. But all I felt was small, like someone had been studying me, writing my reactions in a notebook and planning 3 moves ahead while I wandered through my life clueless. The name, Raven Phase, that same name from the wire transfer. It wasn't just a company. It was a system, a structure she was now part of. And I was a subject, a case number, an escalation risk. I sat on the floor of the bedroom, holding the laptop like it could explain everything if I stared hard enough. Then I opened a new browser tab and typed Raven Phase Logistics into a search engine. Nothing. I tried forums. I tried archives. I even checked old newspaper databases. Still nothing. Finally, I dug into the metadata of the video file. I'm not a tech guy, but I know enough to spot weird details. The video wasn't created on her laptop. It had been uploaded from a remote device, geotagged to a place called Carmine Hollow. I'd never heard of it. A town barely on the map, nestled between hills 2 hours west. Population under 900. No website. No photos. Just a small red dot on a blank patch of road. And one local news article from 5 years ago, titled, Disappearance in Carmine Hollow Tied to Experimental Outreach Program. That's when something clicked. Something sickening. This wasn't just about Morgan leaving me. This wasn't just a betrayal. She wasn't running away from me. She was running to something. Something she'd been preparing for. Something that required silence, secrecy, burner phones, untraceable deposits, and hidden tapes. The worst part? That final note in the video. Monitor subject for escalation. They were still watching me. Somewhere out there, someone was still watching. I wasn't just Everett anymore. I was the variable. The question mark in someone else's plan. And if I was in Phase 2, what the hell was Phase 3? I left for Carmine Hollow before sunrise. I didn't pack a bag. I didn't leave a note. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. Not that there was anyone left to tell. I just drove. Headlights slicing through the mist, tires humming against the road like a needle on vinyl. The GPS signal cut out 40 miles from town, so I relied on memory and instinct and a screenshot of that red dot on the map. The hills grew taller. The trees denser. At some point, I passed a rusted sign that read Carmine Hollow. POP 873, tilted at an angle like it had given up trying to stand straight. The town itself looked like a photograph someone had forgotten to update. A gas station with analog pumps. A diner with peeling paint. A post office the size of my garage. No people. No dogs. Not even a breeze. Just silence. But she had been here. I could feel it. And then I saw it, tucked between 2 hills at the edge of town. A house. Not quite hidden, not quite proud. It looked familiar in a way that made my stomach twist. Red shutters. Sagging porch. Wind chimes that didn't move. I parked the car. The door was already open. Inside, it was different from last time. Warmer. Softer. A fire crackled gently in the hearth, and the woman from before, the one who told me I'd wish I never came, was sitting at the table with a mug of tea. She didn't look surprised. Everett, she said, you made it to Phase 3. I didn't answer. I didn't sit. I just stood there and waited for the rest. My heartbeat was the loudest sound in the room. She nodded slowly, like she respected the silence. Then she slid a folder across the table. A simple manila folder with my name on the tab. Everett Whitaker. Inside were 3 sheets of paper and 1 Polaroid. The photo showed Morgan standing on a beach, barefoot, hair caught in the wind. She was smiling. Genuinely smiling. Behind her stood a group of people, men, women, different ages, all relaxed. Happy. Peaceful. The first sheet of paper was a letter. Handwritten. Everett, if you're reading this, you made it further than I expected. You always were persistent. I know you're hurt. I know you feel betrayed. But the truth is, you saved me. Even if it doesn't feel that way right now. I joined Raven Phase not to run from you, but to find myself again. They help people who've become invisible in their own lives. People who forgot who they were while holding up someone else. It's not a cult. It's not a conspiracy. It's a reset. One I needed more than I ever admitted out loud. You never hurt me, but you buried me without realizing it. I lost my voice trying to keep you whole. And that's not your fault. You were hurting too. You just didn't know how to stop needing me to heal it for you. But you deserve healing too. So here's my final gift to you. Your second sheet. I turned the page. It was a form, stamped and signed. An acceptance form. For Raven Phase Outreach. Phase 3. Restoration track. Not surveillance. Not exile. Support. The bottom was already signed by Morgan. The last line read, Subject is ready to begin again. The third page was blank. Except for one sentence in Morgan's handwriting. You can forgive yourself now. I don't know how long I stood there, holding those pages. I cried. Not like in the movies. Not with a dramatic gasp or a collapsing to the floor. Just slow, silent tears that rolled down my face while the fire crackled and the wind chimes outside finally began to move. I thought the ending of this would be me screaming, breaking things, demanding answers. But instead, I sat down across from the woman, took a sip of the tea she offered, and for the first time in years, I let myself breathe without waiting for the sky to fall. Morgan didn't leave me because she hated me. She left because she believed I could survive without her. And she was right. 1 year later, I live by the lake now. Smaller house, fewer ghosts. I take long walks. I joined a book club. I got a dog. Her name's Luna, and she's terrible at fetch, but great at reminding me to eat. I haven't spoken to Morgan since that day in Carmine Hollow, but every now and then I get a postcard. No return address. Just short phrases. Still painting. Saw a fox today. Thought of you. Hope you kept the dog. I keep everyone. Some stories don't end with reunion, or revenge, or perfect clarity. Some stories just end with healing. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough.